I'm going to give you a test right now. A test that 95% of people fail. Not because they're not smart, not because they don't have the information, but because they don't know how to think, really think. Most people believe they think, but they're just repeating what they've been told. They confuse memory with reasoning, imitation with understanding. And when you see how this test works, you're going to realize something uncomfortable about your own life, maybe even terrifying. If you think you can pass this test, if you think you actually know how to think, say it now. I will pass it. Let's find out if you're right. The test is brutally simple. One question. That's it. But I'm going to keep asking why, again and again, until we reach the real answer, the one buried under all the noise. That process is called first principles thinking. It's the foundation of real reasoning, breaking things down to their fundamental truths and rebuilding from there. It's how I've solved problems everyone else called impossible. It's how rockets became reusable. It's how I see solutions others can't even imagine. But most people never do it because it's hard. It forces you to confront uncomfortable truths about your job, your beliefs, your life. So, here's question 1. Why do you do your job? Most people say, to make money. Okay, why do you need money? To survive. To pay for food, rent, bills. Why do you need those things? Because everyone needs food and shelter to live. Fine, but why do you need to live? That's where most people stop. That's where the silence begins, because they've never asked that question. They've spent their lives doing what they're supposed to do without ever asking why. Why are you living? What are you living for? Not the polite answer, the true one. Most people can't answer that. And if you can't answer why you're living, how can you know if you're living right? Let's go deeper. Why do you live where you live? Because of my job. Why that job? Because I needed stability. Why is stability more important than growth or purpose? Because it feels safe. Why does safety matter more than meaning? See what's happening? You start peeling back layers of habit, expectation, fear, until you hit the truth. Most people don't make choices. They accept them. They follow patterns. They think they're thinking when they're really just obeying invisible scripts written by someone else. When I started SpaceX, everyone told me rockets were expensive. That's just how it is. Hundreds of millions per launch. That's the industry standard. But I asked why. Why do rockets cost that much? Because they're complex machines. Why are they complex? Because aerospace standards demand it. Why do those standards exist? Because of limited suppliers and old systems. And I realized the problem wasn't physics, it was assumptions. So we rebuilt from scratch. We made parts in-house, we reused boosters, we challenged that's just how it's done, and we dropped launch costs by a factor of 10. That's first principles thinking. And it doesn't just apply to rockets, it applies to your entire life. Try it. Why do you want to be successful? Don't say because everyone wants success. That's not thinking. That's copying. What does success actually mean to you? Have you defined it, or are you chasing an illusion handed down by society? And when you defined it, ask why that version of success matters to you. Did it come from your own values or someone else's? Keep digging. Keep asking why. Most people stop at the third why because it gets uncomfortable. Because it exposes that they've been living on autopilot, following scripts instead of writing them. Let me tell you about someone I met. Brilliant lawyer. Big salary, nice house, miserable. I asked him, why are you a lawyer? He said, because I went to law school. Why did you go to law school? Because I got good grades and people told me I should. Why did you listen? Because it seemed respectable. Why did that matter? Silence. Because the truth was, he didn't care about status. He loved working with his hands, building things, creating. He became a carpenter, made less money, but for the first time, he was happy. Because he finally stopped accepting and started thinking. That's the difference between existing and living deliberately. Now here's the hardest question of all. Why do you believe what you believe? Pick any belief, political, personal, moral, and ask why. Because I've seen evidence. What evidence? Have you tested it? Have you looked for evidence that contradicts it, or just the kind that confirms it? Because experts say so. Which experts? Why do you trust them? Because it feels logical. Does it? Or does it just feel right because it fits your worldview? Most people never test their beliefs. They defend them. They seek validation instead of truth. That's not thinking. That's protecting comfort. I question everything, especially my own ideas. I try to prove myself wrong. I look for people who disagree with me, because if I can't challenge my own assumptions, I can't grow. Most people don't want that. They'd rather be comfortably wrong than uncomfortably right. When was the last time you changed your mind about something important? If you can't remember, you're probably not thinking. You're just repeating. And that's dangerous, because the quality of your thinking determines the quality of your life. If you can't question assumptions, you can't make good decisions. If you can't think from first principles, you can't innovate. You just follow the crowd and end up living the same average life as everyone else. And maybe that's fine for some. But if you want more, if you truly want to understand, to grow, to solve, to live deliberately, you have to learn how to think from the ground up. So how do you do it? 3 steps. Step 1, identify your assumptions. Write them down. Make them visible. You can't challenge what you don't recognize. Step 2, break them apart. For each assumption, ask why, again and again, until you reach the real answer, the one buried under all the noise. Step 3, rebuild from there. Once you hit bedrock truth, start building your reasoning up this time, consciously. That's thinking from first principles. Let's apply it to something real, your career. Most people say, I need a good job. Why? To make money. Why? To live the life I want. So the goal isn't the job, it's the life. But if that's the case, maybe there are other ways to live that life. Maybe you don't need the traditional job. Maybe you need flexibility, or ownership, or freedom. You'll never see those options if you don't break the pattern. Why do you need a degree? Because employers require it. Do all of them? No. Could you prove your ability another way? Yes. Could you build skills, start a project, create proof instead of paperwork? Absolutely. But you won't even see those doors until you start questioning the walls around you. This applies to everything. Your job, your beliefs, your relationships, your habits, your goals. Ask why. Keep asking why. Don't stop until you hit the truth, because the truth sets you free, not in a spiritual sense, but in a practical one. It frees your decisions from illusion. It gives you control. And yes, it's uncomfortable, because when you start thinking this way, you realize how many of your choices weren't really yours. How much of your life has been momentum, not intention. But that discomfort, that's the feeling of waking up. If everyone else is thinking in patterns and you think from first principles, you gain an unfair advantage. You see what they don't. You solve what they can't. You live consciously while they live automatically. So here's my challenge. Pick one area of your life. Anything. A belief, a goal, a routine. Apply this process. Ask why. Don't stop at the first answer. Go deeper. Either you'll confirm that your path is built on truth, or you'll realize it's built on assumptions. And if it's the second, good. That means you finally have a chance to change. That's what this test is really about. Not intelligence, courage. The courage to think, the courage to question, the courage to face the possibility that you might have been wrong. 95% of people fail not because they can't think, but because they won't think. Because it's easier to stay asleep than to wake up. Easier to follow the script than to write your own. So here's the real test. When this video ends, will you keep scrolling, or will you stop and think? Will you ask why? Will you dig to bedrock? Will you start rebuilding your